Welcome, everybody, to your free GMAT Prep Hour. It is January 8th, 2024. Happy New Year to everyone. Those of you that are here live, thanks for being here. Those that are watching the recording on YouTube, glad to have you as well. We do these free GMAT Prep Hours once or twice a month. Sign up for them, come along. We have a whole library of these online. Seek out a topic you know you need help on. Honestly, we have basically a full curriculum worth of free material out there. It's getting harder and harder to even think about what to talk about in these sessions because we've covered so much in them. So seek out the various topics in our free GMAT Prep Hour library. If you're looking for other free options, you can try out the first course of any Manhattan Prep course for free. Might as well do it. We talk about some big stuff in session one, a lot about data sufficiency. We get into the basics of critical reasoning. Used to be sentence correction, but you might be aware that the test is changing at the end of January and sentence correction is getting dropped. So in session one, we actually cover some of the basics of critical reasoning, another big question type. You can do the same with our interactive on-demand course, our video course. You can try a sample of that, see if that's to your liking. And we have free Foundations of GMAT Math workshops happening twice a month. There are two such sessions, one on computation and one on variables. They are 5-hour sessions, totally free, where we talk about the foundations of math in a GMAT way. They're some of my favorite classes to teach because we really do break down the concepts and build them back up in a way that I think the GMAT rewards. Today's lesson, this free GMAT prep hour, I'm excited about it and a little nervous. It's very experimental. This is a drill that I assign to students sometimes who need work in reading comprehension. And I'm kind of going to be doing it with you live and figure, I haven't really prepared the answers to the questions I'm going to ask or to the drills I'm going to do, because I want you to kind of see what it looks like when I do it. And this drill, I call it scrambled reading comp. Its basic idea is to take a passage, a reading comp passage. This is a drill. This is not how you do it on the test, obviously, but you take a reading comp passage and you read it out of order. You just don't read it in order. So if you have your official guide, you can, open to a passage and just, instead of starting at the top, start in the middle, start at the end, read a sentence, read a part of a sentence. We're going to go through a few different iterations of this exercise. But the idea is to, you read a sentence at the bottom, then you jump to the middle, then you jump to the top, then you jump back to the bottom, then the middle, then the bottom, then the top. And you read the passage out of order and piece together what you think is going on and what you think is happening. And that's, obviously not how you do the test. When you do the test, read the passage in order, obviously. Why do it out of order? What do I think this drill is doing? I think mostly what this drill does is it forces you to really grapple with the meaning of the sentence you're reading, the purpose of the sentence you're reading, and how it relates to the other sentences you've read. And again, you're reading it out of order, right? But all of those things I just said are what you should be doing when you are reading the passage in order. When you are reading a passage in order, you should be grappling with what the sentence means. You should be grappling with how it relates to other sentences you have read so far. It's just that when you do it in order, that exercise is easier. By doing it out of order, it really ramps up the difficulty. However, when you read in order, it is very easy to not think. It is very easy to think a lot less than you think you're doing, actually. It's easy to kind of substitute thinking for reading. And I often say in my classes, reading is not thinking. It's not the same exercise. It's not the same thing. So what this exercise does when you do it out of order is it forces you to actually think about what you are reading. And then when you finally read a passage in order, it really shouldn't feel too different from the out of order drill that we're doing, except that it's easier. It should be easier to do it in order, but it should be kind of the same exercise. It's just not as hard. And so I really think this gets you into the mindset of what a strong reading comp student is doing when they are reading an RC passage. And I've seen many students, I watch students work, and sometimes I watch them do a practice test. And I'll watch them read, and they will literally just start, and they'll go top to bottom or left to right, top to bottom, and they never stop. They never stop and think. They're just digesting all the words at once, or trying to digest all the words at once, and that's just not going to work. You have to stop. You have to think. You have to piece together what's going on and how this sentence relates to that sentence, and how that sentence relates to this one from the beginning, and yada yada yada. So that's what this drill is for. Okay, now, so what I did was I found some official passages and I scrambled them up a few days ago and I put them out of order and I didn't really read them closely. So I've read them before because these are official passages and I've taken the practice test and so I've probably seen them before, but I don't claim to be familiar with them recently and I haven't read them recently. So you'll kind of see me work through these exercises with you. Okay. And so what I want you to do is, I'll pull up for this first drill, we're going to go one sentence at a time. And again, these sentences are out of order. Now the version we're doing on this screen is even harder than the one you might do in your book because I'm able to actually put the sentences totally out of order. When you do it in your book, you'll know that like, oh, this sentence is towards the end of the passage and then this sentence is toward the beginning. Here it's just random. I literally just scrambled them up until I had no idea what the order was anymore. So I don't know if this is beginning, middle, or end of this particular passage, but we're going to work through this. I'm just going to talk about what I'm noticing in this sentence, what it makes me think, yada, yada, yada. So I want you to take a minute or so to read this sentence and think about it. Think about where it might come in the passage. Think about what might happen before this sentence or what might happen after this sentence. Where, if there is a before or after, think about the logic, think about the meaning, think about what the sentence must be doing or might be doing. Give yourself just time to mull on this. So take a minute or so and just do that. And then I'll tell you what I'm kind of noticing about it. Okay, so that is about a minute. So I'm curious, type in the chat anything you noticed in this sentence. Those of you that are here live, what did you notice about this sentence? What do you think about it? What do you think it means? What do you think its purpose is? Where do you think it falls? Just any thoughts that you got from reading this sentence on its own out of context. So I see that lone wolf, this lone wolf event was an event that severed ties between the native. I'm gonna vernacular is always an issue. I'm going to say Native American just because I know that some people are offended by Indians, some people are not. I'm going to say Native American because that tends to not be offensive. So I'm going to say Native American. So severed ties between the Native American tribes and the federal government. So this was an event that severed ties between the federal government and the Native American tribes. Where do you get, I'm reading that it severed ties? When you say severed ties, what do you mean by that verb? Do you mean never talked again? Do you mean they never made deals again? Yeah, they abandoned negotiations. I mean, that does seem like if they totally abandoned negotiation, well, negotiation and execution of formal written agreements. Yeah, I think that probably, they probably still made some sort of agreements with them, I suppose, but it sounds like it was more one-sided. Yeah, I think so. So we have here an event. Here's what I noticed. We have an event, lone wolf. I noticed this first word, but. Someone fails to note the far-reaching impact. So first off, there's an event, and someone ignored the far-reaching impact. I know that this is not the beginning of the passage because of this word but. That implies that something came before. And so I already know that someone, I don't know who it is, was talking about this event and maybe notes some of the repercussions of this event, but according to the author, does not note the most far-reaching impact, which is that the government no longer negotiated or dealt in written agreements with the Native American tribes. They made policy, right? This is for the implementation of federal Indian policy. So when making policy, right, this is the specificity. When making policy regarding the Native American tribes, there was a before Lone Wolf and an after Lone Wolf. And before Lone Wolf, there was negotiation and written agreements. And after Lone Wolf, there was no negotiation and no written agreements. Okay. And this is one of, like, why this is that logical comparison that the GMAT really asks about, right? The GMAT is going to ask about logical ideas, things that, you know, must be true based on what's written. And here's a clear comparison. Comparisons are a big thing that the GMAT is going to ask about. You know, the before and the after. What can you infer about decisions about federal Indian policy, according to that last line? Okay, so that's what I get from this sentence. Now, the next sentence, take a minute. Let's see what we can get from that. Okay, so the first question I have, since we can do this with this version of the exercise, it's harder to do when you're in the book. One of the first things I want you to try to gauge is, with this, do you think this sentence comes before or after the first sentence we read? We know, again, it's not the first sentence of the passage because we have a but as the first word. So we know it's not the first sentence. Do we think this comes before or after the previous sentence? You think it comes after, Amreen? I think it comes before. Interesting. We disagree. Again, I do not know. I do not know for sure, but I think it comes before. I'll explain why. Do you have a reason why you think it comes after? Not exactly, but a question. Or do you have a question, Amreen? Is that what you're saying? You might. If you're typing a question, let me explain why I think this comes before. So what does this sentence say, right? Just on its own, what does it mean? Yeah, Prakriti sees it, right? Here, they are negotiating. They continue to negotiate formal tribal agreements. And the sentence before says that after Lone Wolf, they had abandoned negotiation. So if I'm making a timeline, at least maybe this does come later in the passage. It could, but chronologically, we're talking about a time before Lone Wolf. Because in this second sentence, they're still negotiating with the tribes. Now, what does happen is we still have a change, or we still have something about this sentence that is to note, right? They didn't treat these documents as treaties. They, the federal government. The federal government did not treat these documents as treaties. They treated them as laws to be passed by Congress. So apparently there's some, distinction here, laws versus treaties, that I'm noticing. They were making treaties, but treating them as laws. But there were still negotiations. Okay, so I'm pretty sure, at least chronologically, this happens before the previous sentence. My guess is in the actual order it happens before the previous sentence. It doesn't have to, but that's my guess. That's what I'm noticing. Let's jump to the next sentence. Take a minute to read this and think about it. Might change my mind. We'll see. And that's a fun thing. You update your kind of judgment as you go through this, right? You might change what you think the passage is saying or what the order of the passage is. You don't have a sense of where the sentence might fall in relation to the previous sentences? I'm pretty sure that this sentence is going to fall before that first sentence. It seems to me that this is going to connect directly into this. Why? Because what does this sentence tell me? This sentence tells me that Blue Clark properly does something. He emphasizes the court's assertion of the virtually unlimited power over Native American affairs. Right. So Blue Clark does something right here regarding the lone wolf case. And then I think that flows perfectly into that first sentence, or not the first sentence in order, the first sentence in the order we're reading it, right? He does this right. He properly emphasizes the court's assertion here, which is that the court asserted that apparently Congress has unilateral power, right, over Native American affairs. So the Congress is really claiming a lot of power over Native American affairs, but he fails to note. So here's what Blue Clark did right, properly emphasizes this, but he failed to do this. He didn't notice he didn't note the far more reaching impact that after Lone Wolf there was no negotiation, no written agreements at all. Okay, that's what I'm noticing here. It feels like this could be the first sentence of the passage. I'm not going to stake my claim on that with any certainty, but it feels like this could be the first. This could be the opening sentence. Okay, but I feel pretty confident that it fits right into that. We'll find out. Take a minute to look at this sentence. Maybe not. Okay. So I have a new guess. I think this is the first sentence now. I take back my previous guess because this is the one that really introduces the full name of the case, Lone Wolf v. Hitchcock. And then the sentence we just looked at says in his study of the Lone Wolf case, which is just a little more casual. Usually, it's just kind of a GMAT instinct that they're going to say the full name first and then maybe introduce it with or discuss it in more casual terms afterwards. But this feels like the first sentence. It gives us context. It, tells us what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about Lone Wolf v. Hitchcock in some capacity. This also is, I'm just noticing this, I'm going to point it out. I don't know if it's a huge deal. This sentence is surprisingly gnarly, I think, because we have one of the GMAT's favorite things, the double negative. We reject a prevention, which I don't know if you're just like, what? Like really get you, when you see those double negatives, just get your story straight because it's easy to get crossed up on that. The Supreme Court rejected someone's attempt to prevent something. So it's like, oh God, okay, let me just rephrase this for myself. So it seems like what was going on here? It seems like someone wanted to open tribal lands to non-Native Americans without tribal consent. So some people were like, hey, we can bring in non-tribes members onto this land. You can't say anything about that. And the Native American tribes were like, yes, we can. You can't do that. And then the court rejected them and said, actually, yes, they can. So that means that according to the Supreme Court in 1903, tribal lands could be open to non-Native people. And the tribes just didn't have any power to prevent that, according to the court in 1903. That I feel like is going to be the first sentence. And then I think we're probably going to flow from that into this, is my guess. We're going to introduce the case. Then we're going to talk about Blue Clark, who studied the case. Then we're going to go to that first sentence on the page. I still don't quite know where this sentence is going to fall. We'll see. We're going to keep moving forward and see. We're running out of sentences. There's only like 5 or 6 in the whole passage. So we'll see where this falls. Take a minute to think about this sentence, though. This one feels like the conclusion to me, the final sentence. It kind of puts the tie on it. Clarifies and emphasizes what was said before, that this decision threw out the empty formality, right, of tribal consent. We know that the first sentence we read talked about how after Lone Wolf there was no more negotiation, no more written agreements. We know that the case, Congress said that they have unilateral power over Native American affairs. So I think this is going to be the button that ties it, just like puts a stamp. It could be, I guess it could be the first sentence, but again, the fact that this says the Lone Wolf decision and this sentence above opens Lone Wolf v. Hitchcock, I think that one above still is the first sentence, and then this is the bookend. Playing that old game of say what you're going to say it, and then say you said it. So let's see what this last sentence says. So now we have all the sentences on the page. And first off, note that, this is a short passage. This is on, but you're going to see two short passages. You usually see two short passages, a medium and a long. And really, even the long passages are 10 to 12 sentences in the short passage here. I mean, notice this is 6 sentences. They're long sentences. We'll talk about that in a moment. But I want you here to order these sentences in your mind. Now that we have them all on the page, put them in the order that you think the passage comes in. I'll give you my guess in about 30 seconds. So, Amreen, I think you were right about the location of that second sentence. I think it does come after the first sentence. Because my guess, here's my live rearrangement attempt. Here's my attempt at ordering this. I think that this is first. We talk about the case. We talk about what happened. We talk about what was going on. Then we're going to say what Blue Clark did in his study. All right, so here's the case. Here's the stories of the case. Here's in his study of the case, Blue Clark does note that it was important, but he fails to note the real importance, which was that this was when the U.S. government just totally said, no more negotiations, no more written agreements. And then we're going to put this last sentence we read, I think fits here. Many commenters believe this change. What change? Well, this abandonment of negotiation and agreement. I'm noticing a connection between these things. And that's what you want to find. You want to find connections. You want to find chances where a reference in one sentence reaches back or sometimes forward to an idea in another sentence and synthesize them, connect them. Right. So many commentators believe that the abandonment of negotiation and treaties had already happened years ago when Congress stopped making treaties at all. So there's actually something I hadn't noticed before is actually they weren't making treaties anymore. Here they were making written agreements with the tribes, but that's not necessarily a treaty with the tribe. And they were treating those documents not as treaties. So then we get to the next sentence. So though they were not making treaties, they were negotiating agreements with the tribes, but they weren't treating them as treaties. They were treating them as just kind of laws that they had the unilateral power to pass. And then we have the button, which is that this was the time when the federal government just said, we're not even going to pretend with the charade anymore. We're going to make decisions and you're beholden to them. Okay. That is my guess of the order. So here on the left is the order I put it in. Here on the right is the actual order. And again, I did this without really paying attention to it. So it looks, looking at colors. There's a color change. Apparently I used a different color here, but yeah. Open the case, study the case, what he did right, what he missed. People thought that this had already happened. Actually, the government was still doing it, kind of, half-heartedly. And then they just threw out even the half-heart. Okay. So that's the rough drill. Is this deconstruction of the passage into individual sentences, into individual ideas, and when you're reading them out of order, and here's the thing, if you have the book, you know where a sentence lies. But if you just ask a friend to do what I did, just write the sentences out and scramble them up, you can replicate this exercise entirely. And you can, do what I did here, which is actually take it and move them around and, see if you can put it in the order that you actually think the passage comes in. And again, the reason I like this idea, the reason I like this drill is because it forces you to really wrestle with the sentences, what the ideas in the sentences are and how they connect to the other sentences that you're reading in a random order. You have to really think about the connections. And that's what you need to do when you're actually reading a passage. And it's very easy to not do it when it's in order because you can just read, just top to bottom, left to right, and it's easy. It's easy to just let the words kind of wash over you, but you're not actively pursuing ideas and connections. To do this drill, you have to pursue ideas and connections. But I can take it even further. I said that there were 6 sentences in this passage, and I noted that they were pretty long sentences. And here's the secret. That's why reading comprehension is often difficult. The passages on the GMAT are written at the college and grad school level. Most of what we read day-to-day life is written for the 8th grade level. Even, sophisticated novels and smart newspapers and magazines, they tend to be written at about the 8th grade level. And that's, why? Well, because who the hell wants to get home from work and crack open a book and have to work hard to understand it? Or, open the newspaper at lunch, at their lunch break, and have to like wrestle to actually get what the story is. They write so that it's easily digestible. The GMAT does not. The GMAT writes sentences that are more complicated. And what makes it an 8th grade level versus a college or grad school level? On one, yeah, vocabulary is part of it, but more than that, it's the sentence structure and the density of thought in a single sentence. They pack a lot into a single sentence. And it's easy to, again, just read the sentence and never finish it. Or sorry, read the sentence and finish it without ever stopping. Read the sentence and not stop to think. But the fact is those sentences can be really densely packed. And so we're going to do another exercise here, another scrambled passage, where instead of separating by full sentences, I've separated the sentences by clause. And a clause, we don't have to think about this anymore because they've removed sentence correction, but a clause is a subject and a verb. A subject doing a verb is a clause. And so I went through a passage here and I picked up roughly where the clauses were. And I've separated those because now we don't even have full sentences to deal with. We have parts of sentences. It's a full clause. It is a subject with a verb. But sometimes, a sentence has a conjunction. There's a but that joins one clause to another clause in a single sentence. There's an although up front that joins a clause to another clause. Sometimes there's dashes in the middle. I think we'll see this on this one that joins many different thoughts. And so same exercise, it's just a level harder because now you don't even get full sentences. You have to piece together parts of sentences. And since it's already 7:40 and time's going fast, we're going to have to move a little quicker through this because there is one more version of this I want to at least discuss. I've also, please note, I have taken away punctuation and capitalization of the first letter of the sentences. So I'm even meaner than a book would be. So you don't know if this is the beginning of a sentence or after a comma or anything like that. I've taken away that aspect of things. Again, I don't know if this is going to work. This could be really, really challenging. But I figured it'd be more fun. So here is the first clause. In the last decade, this approach has become a critical social policy issue. Okay, not much to really think about here, I guess, except that this is not the first sentence. This is, or at least it's not the first part of the first sentence, because what is this approach? Right? I know that there's an approach, and I know it's become a critical social policy issue, but I don't know anything else. I don't think it's the first sentence. I don't think it's the last sentence. It falls somewhere in between. Okay, so I'm very power ahead. So this is a longer clause. So take a minute to think about this one. a lot more meat in this particular clause. And I'm getting a sense about what has become a critical social policy issue, and maybe even a sense of what the approach is. But it looks like we're talking about pay of male and female employees and the gap between them. And it looks like there's been an attempt to close that gap using perhaps this set of principles, comparable worth principles. And we also know that there have been gains. We see that there has been some success in this method. So there have been some gains. The gap has closed using comparable worth principles, but is this going to be transitory or permanent? Meaning, so is it short term or long term? Short term or permanent gains with comparable worth, closing the pay gap. So there have been gains, but is it short term or are they permanent? And it seems like we're going to be maybe discussing this comparable worth principle idea. That I feel like that's going to be the approach. I might be wrong, but I think that's going to be the approach that we're discussing. Next sentence, take a little bit of time to think about this, or next part of a sentence, maybe. So again, more evidence that we're really examining this comparable worth thing. And this sentence, in this sense, then, comparable worth is more comprehensive than other mandates. And so there's been other things trying to close the gap, Equal Pay Act, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. But apparently comparable worth has been more comprehensive than that. And I think that probably means has closed the gap more, probably. The opening of this sentence, of this clause in this sense then does make me feel like what might come next is some downsides, or maybe some, perhaps this isn't as good as it seems, or perhaps isn't as successful as it seems. I might be wrong, but when I see that in this sense, I feel like what's going to come next is, but in another sense, maybe not. But that's just something that I'm noticing. But I do notice that we're examining comparable worth. We're saying it's more comprehensive than other things. That's a nice comparison. I love comparisons. So because I can infer a logical idea that the comparable worth has closed the gap more than these other things, or these acts have closed the gap less than comparable worth has. I can make an inference from this piece of information. Take a look at the next chunk. This widespread institutional awareness of comparable worth indicates increased public awareness that what do you think that is? How do you think that fits? This is the first sentence that I actually think I see a connection, like a direct connection to another sentence. I think that this is going to connect to this one. What does this clause tell me? It tells me that institutions are aware of comparable worth. So comparable worth is known. I don't know what, a sentence might go into more detail about this, but this widespread awareness. So we're going to somewhere down in some of these sentences we haven't seen yet, or clauses we haven't seen yet, they're going to talk about how many institutions know about the comparable worth approach. And then this clause tells me that this institutional awareness indicates increased public awareness that in the last decade, this approach has become a critical social policy issue. I think that idea is going to connect. A lot of institutions know about comparable worth. That tells us that the public is curious about this approach and that it's a critical social policy issue. I think that connection will stick, but we'll see. We'll keep analyzing. The values of certain tasks performed in dissimilar jobs can be compared. The values of certain tasks performed in dissimilar jobs can be compared. So my guess is that this is what, well, take a little time to think about what you think this fragment or this phrase, I guess it's a clause, so I'm going to be grammatically precise here, this clause, what job it's doing, how it relates to what we've seen so far. Take 20 seconds to answer that for yourself. So my guess is that this is describing what comparable worth does, what it is or what it achieves. It helps us compare the tasks performed in dissimilar jobs. I'm just, it's called comparable worth. We're comparing value. My guess is comes early in the passage. I don't see a direct connection yet, but I think this is the definition, or at least the goal of what comparable worth principles do. Helps us take dissimilar jobs and say what the value is. Next clause, but whenever comparable worth principles are applied to pay schedules. Applied to pay schedules. I have a guess. Take a second and see if you can make any connections about this little chunk. So my guess is that this bottom sentence is going to come after the in this sense clause. Because again, that in this sense implied to me that like in this sense, comparable worth does some good things. And this chunk seems to be saying like, but there's that, logical connection, but contrast. When comparable worth principles are applied to pay schedules, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't have the next clause, but my guess is it's going to be a flaw. I might be wrong. I don't know. But we're comparing, when comparable worth principles are applied to pay schedules. Something happens. And my guess is it's something bad to contrast with the something good that we have in that third sentence. So notice what I'm using here. I'm really noticing that contrast word. I notice this chunk of words in this sense then, right? That's setting something up, but it also puts my antenna up for like what the other sense is, right? On the one hand, well, you're going to tell me what's on the other hand. It's just what happens. So you might notice that I'm using within clauses, even smaller chunks of words to make connections. That's where we're going next, right? Right now I'm giving you full clauses. You can even break this down more, but we'll get there in a little bit. Let's take a look at the next chunk. Neither compares tasks in dissimilar jobs. That is jobs across occupational categories in an effort to determine whether or not so this one, I'm curious. I don't have a great sense of it, and I have to move because our hours almost are up already, believe it or not. I feel like and the color is not, it would be a coincidence because the color choice is random. I think that this might be I'm sorry, I think it might go this way. Neither compares, neither what. I don't have a good sense of that yet. And maybe these two other things, the Equal Pay Act and the Civil Rights Act, those might be the things. That doesn't really make sense though, because those wouldn't compare tasks in similar jobs. I don't have a great sense of what the neither is referencing here. But apparently, whatever these two things are, they don't compare tasks in dissimilar jobs, which my thought is that that's what comparable worth does. That was my guess. The comparable worth helps us uh, compare the values of tasks performed in dissimilar jobs. So I thought this before was the definition of, or the value of comparable worth, and it still might be that, but I think it's going to come after discussion of some approaches that don't compare tasks in dissimilar jobs. So we have these other things that we're trying to reduce equity or determine if equity had been, I'm sorry, not reduce equity, increase equity of pay. Some approaches, it seems like, didn't take into consideration dissimilar jobs. Comparable worth did. It helps us compare the value of dissimilar jobs. And then I think we'll get into this paragraph. That's a good thing that comparable worth does. Then we're getting to the next part, but here's some bad things that comparable worth does. We see we're kind of seeing how this passage is going to fit together. Comparable worth pay adjustments are indeed precedent setting. The only thing I would say about that is that it seems to be in reference to this question. Was it a short-term or a long-term permanent change? And this seems to say that at least someone thinks, perhaps the author, perhaps someone else, but someone thinks that they are indeed precedent setting. They are permanent. That's nice. So this probably comes after this question, right? Were they transitory or permanent? Might even be the next sentence. They were permanent. So says someone. We'll keep reading to see. However, the question still remains. That's a short little clause. that could feed into, that actually might be the thing that leads into this question. The question still remains, have the gains already been made under comparable worth principles been of a precedent set, right? This could be the introduction of the question. And then we get the answer to the question that they are precedent setting. That's my guess right now. I accidentally I kept that capitalized. I meant to not capitalize anything. Oh well. And now we're about to go to the next column. So this one, well, take a second. I don't want to move too fast, even though time's running out, but take a second to think. See what you notice in this. So my guess is that this comes early in the passage, is my guess. And I think it's going to come before this sentence, maybe immediately before. We say that all these firms and industries, all these places have adopted comparable worth policies or begun to consider doing so. And then we're going to say that this becomes a critical social policy issue. Or no, then I think, sorry, excuse me. We're going to go not to that first sentence. We're going to go, I think, to this sentence. Right, all these places, because we talk about all the places that have adopted comparable worth. This widespread institutional awareness, which widespread institutional awareness? All these large firms and industries doing comparable worth. So all these firms doing that have indicate public awareness that this approach has become a critical social policy issue. I'm still thinking that's maybe the flow. Perceived unjustified pay differences are eliminated. Okay, where's that going to fit? Like maybe it's coming from here, but whenever comparable worth principles are applied to pay schedules, perceived unjustified pay differences are eliminated. Maybe, but that seems like the opposite of what I want. This seems like the positive outcome, and I think this is leading to a negative outcome. So I'd be surprised if it leads to that sentence. So I'm not quite sure where this fits yet. But it just talks about the idea of pay differences being eliminated. I'm going to go to the next clause and make that a little cleaner. Certain tasks may require a similar amount of training, effort, skill, may carry some responsibility, may be carried on in an environment and may have a similar dollar value to the employer. Okay. Again, this looks like the dissimilar jobs distinction. And so this might come early as setting up like the problem of determining the value of work. And then introduce how comparable worth actually deals with that. Maybe that's where this chunk of text comes. Another long clause. Because of the principles driving them, other mandates can be take a second and read. in different jobs. The principles driving them. I don't know what the them is, but I think it's the neither. It's the same neither that doesn't deal with doesn't deal with dissimilar jobs. Right. So these other mandates that are trying to reduce the pay gap or eliminate the pay gap don't work when men and women hold different, in cases in which men and women hold different jobs. Comparable worth is the thing that comes in and deals with that. That seems to flow directly to this. Because this is what I think comparable worth is going to do and what we've kind of established. It insists that dissimilar jobs require similar things, have similar impact, have similar value, which is why it's been so successful in why it has had some success in reducing pay inequity. That's my guess. Ah, damn. Okay, that also looks like it could be in the exact same place. Shoot. Okay, that also could flow into the. That's funny. I don't know which one it is. I feel like they both could lead to that next part. Interesting. Total coincidence. That's funny. Hmm. I am noticing on the other hand, so we're going to compare that to something else. Uh, that might come from here because this chunk is talking about other mandates. So other mandates didn't deal with different jobs well. Comparable worth, on the other hand, takes as its premise that certain tasks in dissimilar jobs may have similar value. That's what this chunk means. I don't know. I'm still kind of, then I don't know where this sentence is going to go. We'll figure it out. I think we have two sentences left, or two clauses left. Pay inequities, that is situations in which pay is not fair because it does not reflect the true value of a job, exist in the labor market. Hmm. This might, I'm kind of uncertain. This might come after this green sentence. This widespread institutional awareness of comparable worth indicates increased public awareness that pay inequities exist in the labor market. That makes sense to me also. So that green might connect to this blue and not to the pink that I thought it would. Again, you adjust your understanding as you read. And by the way, something you should do when you read it in order to. It's a very easy to get fixed in a meaning. Like you kind of think that a passage means this thing, and then if you don't recognize that it's shifted, which it does sometimes subtly, but you still read it through the same framework, it's easy to misinterpret what's going on. You have to be kind of flexible and be like, oh, I think actually we've changed to this new idea, this new understanding. So I think maybe this is going to come after that green sentence. And then the last sentence, let's see, or the last clause. Okay, here we go. What is necessary to perform these tests, know how, can be quantified in terms of. So I feel like we have these two sentences or these, this is a kind of a similar beat in the passage. Right? What comparable worth insists. So that makes me think one of them is probably going to be the last moment, actually, because again, the last moment is always what I said. Say what you're going to say it, say what I said. The GMAT often kind of follows that basic structure. So let me do my dangest here to put these in order. I never determined what I thought the first paragraph, what the first um, sentence is. I think it's going to be one of these. I think it's just we're going to start with talking about like what comparable worth does. So let's say it's this comparable worth as a standard to eliminate play insists that what is quantified, I feel like it could be that this purple one as well. I really don't have a good sense of that. I think we have this in the last decades. This approach has become a critical social policy issue as right. So now I'm noticing a connection I hadn't noticed before, but in the last decade, something has happened as this has happened. That connection makes sense to me. This widespread institutional awareness. Man, this is tricky. I told you this was going to be a risky experiment because I really don't know what the answer is. If you have any thoughts, feel free to type in the chat what you think might go next, or if you think I've messed up so far. Values compared. So the reason I put this here is because, again, this widespread institutional awareness. What widespread institutional awareness? That connects to the large number, like all this stuff about the private sector firms and industries, yada, yada. That is the widespread institutional awareness. So that really seems to be like that. This would be the next sentence after that. Hmm. I don't know exactly what comes next, but I feel like these come together, right? However, the question still remains, have these gains been permanent? And then I think we're going to go to the answer. They have indeed been precedent setting. I feel like these three come together nicely. I feel like these two sentences pair together nicely. Whenever comparable worth sentences are applied to pay schedules, pay inequities, situations in which pay is not fair because it doesn't reflect the true value of the value of the job exist in the labor market. So this shows that comparable worth is discovering when pay inequities occur. Comparable worth takes as its premise that certain tasks require similar things. Neither compares tasks in dissimilar jobs. What neither? I'm still confused by that neither. I don't have a sense what that neither is. Neither compares tasks in dissimilar jobs. It's got to be. I guess it's the So it's Title VII and the Equal Pay Act. Those are the only two things that I think those are the only two things that could fit with the neither what things don't compare tasks into similar jobs. It's got to be the Equal Pay Act and Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. And I think this order makes sense. We're going to put because the principle is driving them, other mandates uh, have not remedied the issue. Comparable worth in this sense has um, so I was wrong about this job earlier. I thought this was about to say that there was or I think I'm wrong. I think I was wrong. I thought this was about to introduce a downside to comparable worth principles, but I actually think it doesn't. I think I was mistaken about that connection, which is okay. You are allowed to be. You're allowed to misinterpret something and then correct it with more thought. You should. Those come together. I don't know where this clause fits. Perceived unjustified pay differences are eliminated. Here. Yeah. These two things don't compare similar jobs to determine whether or not pay differences are eliminated. That makes sense to me. Okay, we're doing better. Okay. I think this fits after that. Right? Because we have these two things don't do it right, but when comparable worth comes in, pay inequities, when we comply comparable worth, pay inequities exist in the job market. Whenever applied to pay schedules, pay inequities exist in the job market. For the sake of time, because it's already 8:15, I'm gonna show what the actual order is compared to what we thought. Not quite right. So here's my guess. Got the first sentence right. So this sentence is actually, this clause came second. Not bad though. I got this connection. Yep, got that connection, this widespread institutional awareness. Awareness that. So that I had in the wrong place. Pay inequities exist in the job market. So, okay, not bad. The question still remains that have the gains. Yep. So that was the question. And then, yep, it's precedent setting. Got this order right. Here's the other mandates that didn't do it right. Almost right, kind of close. But whenever comparable worth is applied, I don't think I had that quite in the right place. It was just close. I wasn't perfect, but I was close. And look, you're doing this out of order. It's going to be kind of rough sometimes. But back to the main point of the exercise. We're going from this. This is the passage. It's easy to just treat it like this in order when really you need to understand that what a reading comp passage is a collection of thoughts. You can break it into its connection of thoughts, or into its thoughts and how they connect, right? And you want to think about that hard. You want to try to find the connections in this lump of text. And by forcing yourself to do it this way, you have to think about it a lot harder than if you just read it in order. It's so easy to read in order and not think. This exercise forces you to think really hard and really think about what the connections are and what the sentences mean. And we don't have time to do this now, but I'm going to show you an even more scrambled thing that you could do, which is break it down even more. This would be kind of a very, very hard challenge, but break it down even more. If you're at home, pause this screen. This is a full passage broken down not just into clauses, but sometimes into, modifiers of clauses, subjects without their verbs. You have to really notice that, but in 1965, right? That's just a conjunction and a year. But it is a conjunction. It is a change, right? There is something there. So pause and see if you could piece together what order these thoughts are coming. And then here is the pause. Here is the actual answer. See how you did. And again, that comes from this passage. This is the actual passage. So I hope this just kind of, if anything, I know it's a challenging drill and it was a lot of me talking, but hopefully it kind of opened up your mind to what is happening in reading comp, and an exercise that you can do with reading comp, right? How do you improve reading comp? Well, one is read a lot. That helps. But you can also just do drills like this to get yourself actively thinking about words and ideas and the connection between them, because that's what the GMAT really tests. There are some other videos we've made about drills. One of them is just called Reading Comp Drills. It discusses this drill, but it doesn't really do it like we did today. There are some other drills that are done in that video that are nice. I think this is one of my favorite videos we've ever done. It's for the GRE, but it applies to the GMAT. I tried to make one for the GMAT and it's fine, but I think WIT's is better. So I send you to WIT. And it's really about taking a sentence and breaking it apart into its notions and seeing how they connect, which obviously we did some today. This is general about passage mapping and finding logic in sentences and in ideas. Okay, so if you're looking for other reading comp videos, there are those and others out there. We have upcoming courses. Check our website there. Again, you can come to our foundations class free. You can come to the first session of any course for free, and you can come to the next free GMAT prep hour for free. Check our library online. We have a whole list of resources. Thank you for coming today or watching the recording. I will see you next time.